brother.
We love you.
Oh, my goodness. Lord. Boy, I tell you, I love coming to Full Gospel. We do some stuff with Mount Olive in Peoria, but Full Gospel has always been home to us. So I love coming here, but I tell you what, it really, it's kind of funny. We do things different, me and Brother Steve do, because last Sunday I watched service. It was the first time I ever used one of these. And Brother Les preached, and it was amazing. I thought, man, it was good. It was good. Yes, so he got done, and then Brother Jared came up, and he said, Brother John wasn't going to be here, and so we'd have a regular service. In the back of my mind, I thought, he's going to call. Now, we were supposed to do this at the end of December, 1st of January. Plenty of time, but, I'm thinking, he's going to call. So Sunday night goes by, and he don't. And I thought, well, okay. So Monday night, I'm getting ready. We done a Pathway service down at the Man's Mission in Peoria. We do that on Thursdays every other month. And I'm getting things together for that. And I was going to text him about something. I'm not even sure what it was. And I look down, my phone goes off. Oh, who's this? Oh, it's Brother Steve. So I thought, wow. And he goes, hey, he said, why don't we do that Sunday? And I said, can do. And then I thought, how are we going to do that? Well, Wednesday youth, Thursday at the mission, and I have nothing together other than part. So we pulled it out somehow, and here we are. So, and I told Steve, I said, I don't think you can lose a church off one service. I don't know. That's probably happened. But please, whatever you do, come back next week. Anyway, this morning, yes, I want to share my testimony it's actually been 57 years in the making. I won't do 57 years of it, as we wouldn't get home till Friday. So we're gonna skip around a little bit. What I do want to point out is a couple things that, a lot of times I think God intervenes in our lives, and we love to call them coincidences, and we love to say, "Boy, wasn't I lucky?" We use that. I use it. Well, I don't as much as I used to, but I used to use it a lot. So there are a couple instances that I do want to share with you this morning. When we were 5, when I was 5, we lived in Rolla, Missouri. And we lived at a sale barn, and there was a 2-lane highway that come out of Rolla, and we lived right there just coming out of town. And the bus, we would ride the bus to school, so in the morning it would pick us up, and at night it would drop us off. And it was always supposed to wait until we got across the street, because we'd be on the opposite side of the street when we got dropped off. And it was always supposed to wait. Well, one day it didn't wait. I don't know why, and it left. At the time I said, I'm 5, kindergarten. And I go. What do I know? It's a 2-lane highway. Who really cares? I don't pay attention to the road anyway. So I take off, and my older brother, which a lot of you know, grabbed me by the back of my shirt and jerked me backwards. And I literally can remember the white in the wind off that truck. I remember the back of the truck as it went by. And, if I'd have told that story 5 or 6 years ago, it would have been a coincidence. And boy, wasn't I lucky. I'm not so sure I agree with that today. But when I got to about the age of 8, we moved back to Illinois. We were living in Atlanta. And we were going to Minear Assembly. Actually, Brother Randy, we may have been going to Eddie's church, Eddie Cunningham's church. Can't remember, but we were supposed to go to a youth event in Minear this Friday night. And we planned on it all week. We planned on going. And for some reason, we didn't end up going, me or my brother. And we, on the way back, the guy that we were supposed to be riding with, he blew a stop sign out on Arlington Blacktop coming on to 136. He blew that stop sign. So he ended up hitting the embankment at about 70 miles an hour. Back in them days, we wouldn't wear seatbelts. Nobody did back then. So again, I could call it coincidence. I could mark it up as lucky. I don't prefer to, but I could. So then about the age of 10, I believe we have a slide through. Ha ha! Here we go. Huh? Everyone said, check that out. So about the age of 10, we and this is why Full Gospel is so special to me, we started coming here. Yeah, and that's me and Steve. And I tell you what, a finer looking pair I've never seen. And I think that was the old settlers. Remember your dad used to, we do that once a year. Old-fashioned Sunday. Yeah. So we're a little bit older than 10 there. But I do want you to notice, I hadn't seen that picture in years. The first time I seen it was Pastor Appreciation. And when I look at that picture, and I remember as a kid, Dad saying, I'd just like to knock that smirk off your face. I never really understood what he meant until I seen that picture. And then I thought, I would like to knock the smirk off that face. Anyway, the reason I say that is that, my kindergarten report card, one of the comments was that Brian had a problem with authority figures. So as I look at this picture, I think, okay, the problem with it was that issue with authority would follow me, would be a pattern throughout my whole life. So then I want to show you, as me and Steve, we started growing up together, we spent hours at the West Campus. We would spend weekends there. And we were part of the original worship band. What do you think about that? Yep. That was in the parachute pants days. Parachute pants. Now, if you'll notice Sister Deb there, the little fella, that's Josh. Where's Josh at? That is Josh. Yeah, and Josh played the tambourine. So that goes back a little bit. So, and I have extremely fond memories of them days. Then we were also, me and Steve, we got a slide here that, okay, again, we were members of a Christian rock band. We weren't discovered yet. We were going to be discovered, but we just wasn't yet. And there are some tapes that we have. They're not for sale. Eventually, maybe we'll make a CD or something. You never know. I wouldn't count on it, and don't wait for it. But then, fortunately, years later, I had the very honor of being in Steve's wedding as his best man. As one of the biggest honors I've probably ever had in my life. But like Steve said, now we got a slide of us there. We are, again, I wanted just to show you how good looking we were in them days. I don't want anybody to miss out on that. Oh, Jared's looking at it. I know it's there. Well, no. Because we're not getting married. Let's be real clear right here. And let's straighten this up before anything goes any further. Just in case. Well, while they're finding that for me, like Steve said, honestly, around 16, 17, I started growing a little bit distant from God and do the lifestyle I was living. Honestly, at that time, I discovered alcohol. And that was kind of where I was going. I'd went through some other stuff about that same time. And I remember, and most people probably don't remember, at the West Campus, we would sit in the back for service. And I can remember sitting in the back pew, then I would be shaking. It'd be morning service, and I'd be shaking. And I drank the day before, night before, and I hadn't ate. So I would shake until I eventually would get home to eat. And, one thing about it I will say is I never stopped believing in God. When I left the church, I never said I don't believe in God. I never said I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in any of that. I never said that because that wouldn't have been true. What I did do was decided I was doing it my way. I've been bad about that my whole life. So, I give you an idea. My first marriage began and ended in less than 2 years. And again, alcohol and some other issues played a part in that. So, then, around the early 20s, I moved to Peoria. And honestly, for the next 37 years, I lived life. And then when Steve talks about how we didn't talk much, and we didn't. But one thing Steve did do was Steve continued to pray for me. Like I said, that I was living life. I met my wife, Tracy. She's here today. good-looking woman. And we had 2 beautiful daughters, but our journey included a marriage, a divorce, and a remarriage. That I'm thankful for. That I am thankful for. So, but you know what the truth is? I actually met Tracy in my first marriage. I lived in Bartonville for a short time, and Tracy worked at the gas station. And, you know, I never did forget her. So when I went back, fortunately I found her. She wasn't a rabbit. She didn't run off on me. My career-wise, I was in the collision repair industry. Some of you know my dad owned the shop here in town. So that's kind of where that got started. Then and my slides are up. The boys are looking at me like, well, they were up. Seemed to have been a stop. There we go. At the age of 26, I became an I-car instructor. I was the youngest I-car instructor in the nation. You know, like I said, I did it my way. And I was a shop foreman and an estimator for a large independent shop in town. We opened our first shop at 30. And we operated this shop for about 3 years. And then both me and Tracy and I had medical issues that forced us to close that shop. I struggled with anxiety and depression around this time. There's a couple bad years. So anyone that's struggling with anxiety and depression, believe me, I know what you're going through. But then I remember, you know, when Paul told us in 2 Corinthians 12:8, thrice I've asked to have you remove this thorn from my flesh. But God told him, and my grace is sufficient, and his power is made perfect in our weakness. I tell you what, I had to say that scripture more times than I can remember, to be honest with you. So I will say to a lot of people, I can guarantee you the struggle's real. You can believe me or not believe me, it's up to you. But I promise you that struggle's real. So then, 2004, I decided to change the career path a little bit. Again, I think I was searching a little bit even at this point. But I decided to change the career path, and I thought to myself, what better way than to climb under a 1,500-pound animal and drive a nail in their foot? You want excitement? Here you go. A little bit of wind, it's on. So I graduated out of there and done some other training. And then actually for the next 6 years, I shot horses and I did continue to keep working the shop. My wife at that point had went to work for a large company in 2001 as a contracted security officer. And in 2012, she started working directly for the same company in security management. And she still does that today. It's kind of cool, some of the stuff she does. Anyway, in 2010, we bought our second shop. We bought Germantown Auto Body, and we ran it for 12 years, and then we eventually sold it in January of 2022. Now, the reason I've shared this story so far is to show you that, honestly, by all earthly standards, we're doing well. Successful business, done well. The wife had a good job. We had 3 grandkids. At the time, we may have had 2, 3. I had toys. I had horses. You know, if you looked at me from the outside, man, that guy's got it going on. And, you know, honestly, I will say, if I went by worldly standards, I did. All was well. But about at the age of 50, you know, I just started feeling there's got to be more. My whole life, you know, the aspiration to own my own shop and build my own shop. And it really almost took precedence to the family. That's where it was at. That was my goal. This is who I was. This is what I did. But, you know, Stephen Covey once said that after you get, you know, when you climb to the top of the ladder, sometimes when you get to the top of that ladder, you realize your ladder's against the wrong wall. I didn't think about that at the time. So, and again, I'm struggling with a little bit of this. I do believe that that we have an inner hole that only God can fill. I do believe in a God hole. I think that you can try it with anything, but there's only one that fills it. And I know this because I lived that. So, but I had all these things, but you know what? The biggest regret I have is my kids had no foundation in Christ. No foundation in the church. My parents would take them to church. They would come here sometimes, and they would go to Clinton, but they didn't. And I'm sure over the years, when they would ask me, hey, Dad, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And again, I never stopped believing. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God. So I would give a short answer. You're right, kids. God's good. Jesus is real. Let's talk about something else, So I have to live with that. We were the term holiday Christians. Made every one of them. Sometimes I would go during the year, depending on how bad Mom called. If she called a lot, then you had to go. She didn't call a lot, So, but you know what? It reminds me of Philippians 3:8. Boom. Paul refers to his accomplishments as dung. And although we accomplished a lot, me and my wife both did. We bought, 3 houses. I don't know. Yeah. But you know what? There was still something missing. There was still something missing. So, the aha moment. Then you realize exactly what you're missing. Proverbs 22:6 tells us that. And by the way, when it said when he was old is kind of a number. I was only 50. So anyway, that was the aha moment. I knew what was missing. The sermons came back. The preaching come back. All that stuff come back that honestly I hadn't listened to in years. Other than when Mom would call. And like I said again, Steve prayed the entire time. So did his dad. But there is something too, I will say, to a praying mother. How many got praying mothers? Man, I tell you what, you can't beat a praying mother. You just really can't. Or in grandma even more. Because I tell you what, grandma's got more time. Mom might be busy, but grandma has nothing to do. So, somebody tells you my grandma will pray for you. Well, you better hope it's for the good and not the bad. Because she does have time. So I rededicated my life to Jesus, and Tracy gave her life to Jesus. And we started coming to Full Gospel. Of course, Brother Tom met us with open arms. He's smiling. That's a good thing. But, okay. So what Brother Steve was talking about, the next part of this testimony is a little bit different. So about 6 months before we sold the shop, I had a front building. And I was downstairs and I would pray in the morning before I started the day. And, I'm praying away. And, I just felt the Lord tell me, get ready. Get ready. And how many grew up Pentecostal here? Did all you guys grow up Pentecostal? Okay, so growing up Pentecostal, how many times do we hear that message? At least twice a month. At least. So I thought to myself, thank you, Lord. I tell you, I appreciate you. I know that. It's come back. I kind of got it. Then, around the same time, Trace she just felt like the world was just a little bit dark. Things were just, for some reason, things were changing. This was right around the time of COVID, so you had old COVID things. She was working from home, and she was really feeling it. She's a lot more intuitive to that stuff than me. I am not. I can walk in and she removed the furniture in the living room, and I will, as long as my chair didn't move, I'll notice nothing. And she will say, you notice anything? And I'm like, no. Other than my chair is fine. It's clean. So, but she's real. She really does notice that. And she also started having strong feelings about my nephew. Everybody said he was doing fine. We never heard any different, but he did struggle with some mental health issues. In fact, during a dinner with Steve and Deb, Trace she was upset, and her and Deb were talking, and same deal. She said, something's wrong, And then we went about a week or so later. We went to dinner with my folks out at Culver's, and after church, and she broke down. She said, something's wrong. Nobody's telling us that. Nobody's saying, hey, there's issues going on. Nobody said nothing. Everything's cool. So I'm thinking, well, honey, man, maybe it's this whole COVID thing. Maybe you're just upset. So, and he lived with my mother-in-law and had since he was 17, 18. So anyway, at this point, the shop was sold. I went to work in town. The shop in town, and Trace was it. Climbing the corporate ladder, as they say. April 14th, 2022 was the day that everything kind of changed. So I went to work that morning. I went and opened up the shop. I went to work for another shop in town. Trace called, and I couldn't understand what she was saying. And, honey, what's going on? And I thought she said that our dog had bit her. Well, Trace had been bit years ago really bad. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to go home and deal with this dog. Now, we deal with dogs different than most people, but we're going to deal with this dog. Anyway, that's not what she said. Eventually, I understood that what she said was my nephew had killed my mother-in-law. So I told her, I said, I'll be home to get you. So I went home and I picked her up, and we went up to her grandma's house, and law enforcement, the coroner, and the police were just taking my nephew to jail. Honestly, we were kind of all in shock at this point. We didn't really know what to do. Everyone just kind of looked at each other, So there was an organization called Aftermath that helped us with that. Don't be crying, Mama. We got to get through this. We ain't got much left. So now here we go. Okay. So how many people watch IDTV in here? Nobody? Okay, I know my wife does. We watch hours of IDTV. Now, we have for a long time. And I will tell you one thing. They put them pictures up there, and you're like, whoa, holy cow. But I will tell you one thing. Nothing prepares you for the real thing. So we called Pastor Steve that afternoon, and he prayed with us. And I do want to thank Full Gospel, Brother Keith, Brother Joel, and Brother Randy, Brother Tom. That was rough. That was a rough time. The Full Gospel was really a rock. A lot of the ladies sent cards, and in fact, Brother Keith and Kim were the first card we got was from them, and it was good. It was good. Now, I've told you what happened, but what I want to tell you and what I want you to remember out of this whole thing is what didn't happen. So the incident happened in the living room of my mother-in-law's house. They think around 7 the night before, actually. So at 11, later that night, our nephew had texted one of his other great aunts, not the one that lives up here, but the one that lived down in Bartonville, had texted her and asked her to come up. Said my mother-in-law and him needed help and to come to the back door. Keep in mind, the incident happened in the living room. Well, that aunt, she watches her grandkids, so she's got that phone by her all the time. She lives on that phone, much like our grandchildren do. But that night, she put her phone in the kitchen. She never put her phone in the kitchen. She puts her phone in the kitchen. So she don't get the text. So therefore, she don't go up there. Now, she later told us the next afternoon, I wouldn't have went up there. That's a lie. She'd have went up there. She wouldn't have thought twice about it. Why would you? So honestly, I think that was intervention number one. So, and the second intervention came when the aunt, the aunt's house there, they would go to the grandmother's house every morning. The aunt would, my mother-in-law would, the other aunt that got the text, they all met up there. And they, I used to call them quite the clan, because where you saw one, you saw them all. So they would meet up there. So she goes over, and my mother-in-law's not there. And she thought, well, that's odd. Why, she's always here. So my mother-in-law at that point had been keeping her phone at the grandmother's house. She didn't have it at the house with her. So the aunt decided, she was concerned. So she decided to go over to the house and check on her. Well, when she got over there, she noticed that the front door was locked, which is something my mother-in-law never did, and I always told her, lock that door. She didn't. So she knocked on the door. She didn't beat on it. It was early in the morning, so she knocked. Went around to the back door, and the back door was locked as well. And again, a sliding door. She never locked that door. That door was locked. She then said, well, maybe something's wrong. Maybe they're really sick or something. So she goes back to her house, gets a key to that house, goes back, puts the key in the lock, and the lock won't turn. She tries it several times. Can't get the key to work. She knows it's the key. Won't turn. She thought, man. About this time, the other aunt that lived down the road, she got up there. She made it up to the grandmother's house. So she went back over to the house and met her. So they're thinking, if they're sick or something, they can't get up. We're not going to be able to pick them up. They were elderly. So they called my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is a pretty decent-sized guy. Called him and said, hey, can you come up? He said, yeah, I can come up. And my brother, he's an eccentric, but he's good people. But if you want to hear conspiracy, anyway, you're going to be there for a while. So anyway, he come up, and so he, again, we're all thinking, He comes up and he's no big deal. He goes over. He tries the key. He tries to open the front door. Can't get it open. Beats on a little bit. Yeah. So he goes around to the back door. And he ends up, he just popped the slider off, slid the door open. He goes in, and my nephew is now standing in the hallway. I mean, saying nothing, he's just standing in the hallway, kind of blocking the front room. So my brother-in-law said, hey, he said, where's Grandma at? You know, saying anything. So he hollers out, hey, Mom. Nothing. So, he's sensing, hey, something's wrong here. So he's got one of the aunts that lived up there. She's behind him. So he turns around to her, and he's getting her out, and he said, you need to go call 911. So she's kind of backing up. When he turns back around, now my nephew has a sledgehammer. I'm not really going to mention how the incident happened any further than that, but he's got a sledgehammer. So my brother-in-law, like I said, although he's an eccentric, he's got a pretty sharp mind on him. He says, something's wrong. So he backs out, gets out of there, and they go. And I really consider that intervention number 3, because I do believe that he was the only one that could have went in that house and not had an issue. So he goes back to the house, and they wait. Law enforcement gets up there, and they arrest my nephew. Now, this, we're not even done yet. This is my oldest girl, Amanda. Takes after her mother. Just want to throw that out there. The kids were on spring break. So my mother-in-law would watch the kids. So she would take them up there every morning and drop them off. Earlier, middle of the night, just a little bit in the next day, her hot water heater goes out. So they have to get the hot water heater repaired. So my son-in-law stays home. So my daughter, my grandsons, they don't go up. So they don't go up there that morning. This is my youngest girl. This is Tia. She looks like me. Anyway, she has my granddaughter, and it was the same deal with her. She would take them up. The kids were on spring break. She would take them up and drop them off. My mother-in-law would watch them. The night before, they get chicken at the grocery store, and my son-in-law gets sick. So the next morning, he's sick. So he keeps my granddaughter with him, and so Tia don't go up there either. So neither one of my girls go up, and none of my grandkids go up. These, I figured I'd show you a picture of these fine young kids here. These are the grandchildren. This picture is really old. They've grown quite a bit. Yeah, they couldn't really sit on a dinosaur anymore, or a turtle, whatever that thing's on. Anyway, so both the girls, neither one of them went up there that morning. And the significance of that is, again, nothing was said with anything, as far as we didn't have anything to worry about. But I promise you, as sure as I'm standing here, them kids would have went to that house to check on their grandma. I had no doubt in my mind. And at this point, my nephew was still in the house. And if they thought she was sick, they'd have made him go over there twice as fast. Now, the reason I want you to keep that in mind is when they arrested my nephew, he told one of the officers that he felt he was going to kill the whole family. He wasn't done. Crazy thing about this is the neighborhood they live in, he could have got away with that. These people were very much to theirself. Who would have checked other than family? So that's intervention 5 and 6. We're not done. This is a picture of a lantern. It's on my front porch. We got 2 of them. One sits here and one sits over here. When we went home that night, after we'd been there all day, we were exhausted. We were tired. We were mentally drained, physically drained. We didn't have nothing left. So we went in, and I sat down in my chair. And my wife, and if you've ever seen our front yard, it looks like an airplane landing. Every time we're at Menards, we buy a box of outdoor lights. I mean, the yard is full of outdoor lights. So I look out. So I was kind of used to seeing lights. I look out, and there's a light on, and I'm thinking, what light is that? And so I go out, and it's the lantern on the left side's lit up. And the significance of that is the week before, my mother-in-law was over for Aiden's, my grandson's birthday. And she was sitting below that, kind of catty corner from that light. And she asked my wife, she said, hey, did you get that light from me? And my wife told her, no, Mom, we got that from the antique store. And that was true, we did. We bought them in Metamora. So the light stayed on, and we went to bed. Like I said, we were tired. We went to bed. Next morning, I got up. Man, it had been raining a little bit the night before, so I thought, come on. Got to be an explanation. It's got to be. I went out, flipped the light, and the light done just what it should. It wasn't on, but it clicked on, it clicked off. Anyway, I grew up Pentecostal, like a lot of you have. And as I'm standing here, I've heard it all. I've heard of blind people reading. I've heard of, people can't walk, getting up, taking off down the aisle. We've all heard the testimonies. I always thought, that's awesome that it happens to people. But it don't happen to regular people. I mean, that must be super spiritual people. It must be something else. So as I share this testimony with you today, if there's any doubt, I get it. If you were to have told me this testimony, I would have looked at you and I would have said, brother, sister, man, it's awesome. God delivers. God delivers. But I would have walked away for a minute and I would have thought, praise the Lord. You know what I'm saying? So it was, we've been working on this for a couple years with this. And I told Steve the other day, I said, you realize once this verbally comes out and you say it, things change. Because, you know, at this point, and when I come back to Christ, I've still done it my way. When I would get in trouble, I would say, Lord, you're going to have to give me a few minutes. You know, you go over here, I need to fix this. It's just what I did. So I believed in God. But did I trust God? I don't know. I don't know. Do I trust God now? Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more. A little bit more. Now, did God prepare us for this tragedy with, you know, in the basement and with Trace starting to just feel it? I believe so. I believe so. I believe if we hadn't come back to church and hadn't rededicated our lives and that would have happened, knowing my preference and choice of what I would have done, yeah, things would have went a whole lot different. So I will say this, if a mortal man, Brother Tom, had done that, would have saved what I would consider 10 lives, if they include my wife and I would owe that man my life. That's just the way I was raised. I think God deserves at least that, don't you? So, one thing I will tell you, and all the things that you can acquire in life, and all the mountains you can climb, and all the accolades you can put behind your name, and all the things. You know, one thing I notice sometimes is the more letters that go behind the name, the smarter the people seem to think they got. But if you're looking, Psalm 16:11, if you're looking for eternal and lasting peace and joy, I promise you there's only one place to get it. Matthew 16:25, I've heard that. I've read that verse, heard that verse my entire life. Never really fully understood it, to be real honest with you. I thought, wow, you know, how do you do that, man? I got these things I need to accomplish. Man, I got horses to shoe. I got business to run. I got to go. But after that, I finally really understood what that meant. So, that is my testimony. And please, nobody call the hospital and say, we got a guy. But I thank you for your time, for listening, and I do hope. I do sincerely hope, because like I said, I am not, it isn't that I'm not headstrong anymore. Don't get me wrong. You can ask my wife. I am horrible about it. But I'm working on it. I'm going to hand it back to Brother Steve.